Okay, good.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, so so what you mentioned before is a very I find it a very good point, a very interesting point, which is like having an open conversation with people about the ability to reduce their animal consumption and potentially open them up to ways to find alternatives to their food choice. Is that kind of what you're trying to say?
Well, that's what I'm trying to say, because if you come to a person and the person tells you that he wants to get strong for X or Y reason, uh, I've seen that happen. That's why I'm
Mm,
saying that. Some guys are just like, yeah, you're not motivated enough for me, you're not this enough, you're not that, you're not this, you're not that. But in reality, you can't really say that. Why?
yeah,
Because if he comes to you,
yeah,
it depends on you to
yeah.
find a way for that person to be feeling comfortable enough, so then you can
Yeah.
potentially have a conversation.
Here's the problem with that, and I think it was explained really, really well by a guy called Earthling Ed. I can share with you some of his
Yeah,
positions on exactly this
yeah,
topic.
yeah,
Funny little side story. I actually recently messaged a female vegan. I don't know if she's vegan. She's like at least plant-based or reducetarian or something.
yeah.
And she made a post about this very same topic. It's just like, oh, I love cheese, or I love this. It's like, if you've been saying this, please try my method, which is to just have, meatless Mondays and this sort of approach, and like have these ways of introducing reducetarianism, which is essentially this point, is kind of finding this middle ground. And the reason that this doesn't work is that it creates an avenue for people to leave at any point. And the point of veganism is to, again, consider the victims in this example. So if I can use the example before about slavery, right? Imagine someone has 4 slaves. It's like, oh, you know what you should do? You should try have just 3 slaves for a little bit and see how you feel with 3 slaves. And then, but all of a sudden, you've made an injustice which is about the victims. You've made it about them again. So what you've essentially done is you've created this platform to be like, you know what? To make myself feel better about myself, I'm going to go vegetarian, or I'm going to have 3 slaves instead of 4 slaves. And that way I can do the right thing and I can still have what I want. But then as soon as you remove 1 slave, or you remove the whatever one aspect, at any given point, you can introduce that back in many cases, even worse, because they'll bring in another slave or try and kind of
Yeah.
overcompensate from it. So
But that,
no,
I understand where you're going, but that's not what I meant. What I mean by that is what? When someone comes to you because he wants to get strong, and you had some people coming to you because of different reasons,
mhm,
they might not necessarily fully understand their quest. They know that they had something in them telling them, I have to go and do something. Now, what I'm saying is not tell the person, like you said with the slaves. What I would say to a person is like, I will spend time explaining that person for different reasons why doing what he does is not good. I'm not gonna even entertain or think of telling him, "Oh, you should have 3 slaves," or no.
yeah,
So what I'm saying about that topic regarding veganism is not that. What I'm saying is, if you do want to make yourself, and unfortunately, every single quest anybody would want to do, you have to consider where you are at this point,
yeah,
where people are at this point, and which way you can meet
yeah,
somewhere. Because if you do not meet somewhere, the only thing that it does is just gonna be
yeah,
making they staying on their position, you staying on your position, and no one goes, nothing, or no one goes forward.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, it's like, it's not what I'm trying to say is, it's not what you say or what the people have understood that matters. This, no. What matters is what it ends up. And
mm,
if one camp, what I'm saying, meat eaters or not meat eaters, have to be able to understand is that none of this will be done by just saying, okay, look, what I do is good, what you do is bad. No. Unfortunately, you have to be able to
yeah,
understand that even a person who wants to know about veganism,
Yeah,
will have trouble to understand what it is. And depending of the person who's going to introduce him veganism, that person can be jumping on board or jumping off board. And now it's not about, let's say, it's not because you know better that, and you could be right, then others are wrong. And if you, like you said, if it comes back to this, if you are, let's say, stronger, like we say, women, animals, or anything, we have to protect them. If we have more knowledge than others, we have to educate them. So it's not about being right or wrong, but it's really about finding the right way to make people understand. It's not about.
I 100% agree. I agree with that. Exactly what you're saying. My point, what I was saying before, when I get to so my point saying finding this sort of middle ground approach. First of all, finding that middle ground approach is inherent whenever you talk about any injustice, but the difference is psychological. So what I mean by that is that if you approach a client, so I have clients, and it's exactly the same thing with my clients. Someone comes to me, I want to get strong, I want to do this, I want to do that. The way I approach that person is going to be very different depending on who they are. If they're a bit softer, the way I need to approach them is kind of be like, nudge them and these are the sorts of foods that I want you to eat. And they're like, oh, where's the meat? Where's the this? Where's the eggs? Where's the dairy? And I'm going to be like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And then they're going to be like, oh, I thought I needed to eat meat to grow muscle. And I was like, where did you learn that? So it's a softer approach, and it's exactly kind of in line with that. But the difference, what I'm trying to say before, is that whenever we have friends or family who we just kind of blow over, or they say, I need to eat meat, and we kind of like, yeah, sure, you do you and I'll do me. That is a big problem, because we're not challenging their view, or we're not getting them to challenge their own views. So here's the example on here. So if I have a reducetarian, say instead of having 3 slaves, instead of having 4 slaves, have 3 slaves. Again, what I've done is I've made a problem about the victims, about them, so that they can control how many slaves that they have without realizing, without thinking about the victims, without thinking about what they're doing to be wrong. Now, do you think that I became vegan overnight? Do you think that?
No, of course not. Yeah. Of course I know. Of course, of course.
So no one becomes vegan overnight. No one learns about injustice. No one becomes anti-racist overnight. So these sorts of things take time. Now, what we try and do is plant seeds in people to have that when we have that conversation. Any activist out there knows that when you talk to someone, it's very, very, very extremely unlikely that that person is going to go vegan overnight. However, to share a little bit of story about myself and how I got to my point, when I was, before I was vegan, you could even consider me to be anti-vegan, right? And 2 years before I became vegan, I discovered a guy on YouTube called Vegan Gains. Now, Vegan Gains is not everyone's cup of tea. He's a very aggressive, approaching kind of person. I very much like his method because it's very different to other vegans who are much more softer. There seems to be a lot of softer vegans, which is fine. It has its place, but the harder vegans are kind of difficult to get to. So the way I became vegan was watching his videos, and I was like, stupid vegan, you can't even get your protein. And then he would make a video explaining how you get protein. And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to make up something else now. Calcium, B12, or animals eat other animals, crop death. And he would explain every single point. I had millions of arguments against veganism, and he destroyed every single point of arguments towards that. And eventually it got to the point where I realized that I am contributing to unnecessary suffering, and I no longer want to be part of that. And I can tell you right now, it was about a 2-year process. I was essentially vegetarian for a couple of months, and still within me, inside of me, I still wasn't in line with my own beliefs, which is dairy and eggs exploit and enslave animals for no reason. So I need to be in line with that. Now, if you ask any vegetarians have been vegetarian for years. They've been since birth. There's no problem with that. Now, what they've created, vegetarians, I personally and many other vegans are on the same page with that. Vegetarians are worse than meat eaters. Why? Because they've created this sort of bubble where they are morally superior while also being still contributing to unnecessary suffering and death. And it's that sort of reducetarian concept, and it's just so terrible for what vegans are trying to accomplish. And again, imagine you have this sort of person who murders people, right? Murdering people is like, I murder boys and I murder girls, right? And imagine someone comes up to you and says, oh, hey, how about instead of murdering girls, how about you just murder the boys, just the boys? And then you go, oh yeah, actually that's a great solution. Now I'm in a position where I feel like I'm doing something morally better, but I'm actually not. In some cases, I could be worse because I could be murdering more boys than girls that I was killing before, you know? So this is a big problem with that. And to the point before is like, if you explain to the beginning of why you are doing something, it's not to do with health, it's not to do with the environment, it's about the victims at play. That plants the seed into someone's head about why they're making these sort of choices. I've been vegan before I was vegan. I was 2 years pushing back till eventually I realized that my choices affect other people, other beings, and in this case, the animals. So I want to align my morals with my actions and not contribute to that at all. I don't want to murder 1 in 7. I don't want to murder 1 in 100. I don't want to murder 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million. I want to do the least amount as practicable as possible. So I think that is the kind of way to explain my position on that. Does that make sense?
That's what you mean. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense. And you see, your point is not really getting across a lot because, unfortunately, like again,
short term it doesn't. Short term it may not feel like it, but long term it does. But the approach of like, you should try doing this might work short term. Like the example that I said before, instead of having 4 slaves, why not have 3 slaves? That works short term. It does. But long term, it's worse. It creates much bigger problems in the long run. And this is why all these activists, they don't have this middle ground approach. That if you go to any vegan activist into London, which I know so many of them, and people start talking to them and they say like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about doing Meatless Monday. Do you know what they will say? They'll just be like, how would you like it if you were part of that Monday? How would you like it if you were that animal that was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Because what you're trying to get them to understand is that just because you reduce your consumption by 1/7 is not good enough. And it's not, and I know it's hard for people to hear this, and I know it's kind of like a more direct approach, but unfortunately, people need to hear the truth. They need to be able to take that information on board, even if it means short term they're going to be against us, right?
Yeah,
because we don't have slavery now. And the reason we don't have slavery now is because we've had people who have been arguing and debating and fighting for the rights of animals and humans to not be enslaved. And their approach was never slaveless Mondays. I can tell you right now, you know?
Yeah, no, of course not. The approach was not slavery, but the thing is, as much as it wasn't slavery Monday or anything, or no distant approach, unfortunately, people will still do whatever they want, whatever they and racism or slavery has turned to be just different. It's just not the same thing, but it's just different. So at the end of the day, and that's for me, it's the same. Like it comes to all of these new, I can say, when I say new, like it's not new ideas, actually, it's things that should have been discussed long time ago. It's not yesterday. Yeah, it's not yesterday. But unfortunately, even on racism, at the age we live in now, today, there are still people who do not understand that no one is born choosing where they're from. So you're talking about animals, or you're talking about anything else. What's the difference? Apart from being a different species, it's the same thing, because we didn't change that. We still didn't change that. People will still live the COVID have shown. Some people have been taking the vaccine, they died from it. Some others they died from it. Why? Because as long as and this is the big issue, as long as no one will take in their own person the responsibility of doing things according to what they this guy's gonna take a ticket, according to what they really believe. Like when I say white on black or black on white, as long as it's that, as long as it'll be okay. For example, I'm taking something totally different. A guy like Dana White who slapped his wife gets no how do you say,
publicity,
no punishment or nothing at all.
Yep.
On top of that, he gets publicity, and on top of that, he builds up his own slapping contest. As long as we will allow these type of things to happen, how can you even think of telling people to be doing, really, to be able to, how can I say, live by what they say? So everyone nowadays can be faking. I could be even there faking and telling you, no, I'm not eating meat, having a steak ready.
Yeah, that's like, people do that. I know people do that. It's same vice versa, you know. People need to understand that, like, you can be against one injustice and another, right? No one here is condoning slapping the misses or wives or girlfriends of any partner, right? I had this conversation with a friend of mine, you know, like, oh, well, why are you talking about veganism? There's bigger problems in the world. And I was like, well, I'm not contributing to the terrible things in the world as well as reducing the amount of animal suffering. To be honest, I think what we do to animals on some scale is really, really bad, especially considering the secondary factors of the amount of emissions that we're producing because of these animals, and the amount of health issues that it's causing towards human beings as well. So I would like to know, is like, what could be more important than this? Oh, you know, in my country, from Serbia, politicians are corrupt. And I was like, so are you part of this corruption? Are you causing this corruption? No. Oh, you're not. Oh, okay. So because I'm vegan, I'm causing the corruption? No. Okay. So why can't I do both? Why can't I protect human rights as well as animal rights? Why can't I protect, you know, the female right to vote as well as the animal rights? Like, why can't I align all these things all in the same page, put them all together, be morally consistent with my actions, and go with it? So for me, like, human beings and animals, I'm not saying animals are more important than human beings. I'm not saying human beings are more important than animals. I can see argument for both depending on who it is. What's more important, my friend's pet dog or Hitler? I'm going to say my friend's pet dog, you know, because Hitler was a terrible person, did terrible things, right? Now, it could be vice versa. If there's an animal that's going around the town killing other human beings, okay, this animal needs to be dealt with in a certain way, right? So we need to understand each individual creature. These creatures that we're consuming, not only are they majority herbivores eating plants, eating all the plants that human beings could eat, but they're innocent. They're not doing anything. They're harmless. They can't do anything. In fact, a lot of, you know, history shows that the reason we eat these animals is because they don't do anything to us. They can't fight back, right? So it's horrible what we do to this.
It is.
So yeah, the thing is, with the reducetarian approach, I very much disagree with the sort of, like, I never condone Meatless Monday. I never condone vegetarianism. I never condone reducetarianism in any way, shape, or form, because I feel like in the long run, it does not cause any positive. Maybe in the short term, it causes them to reduce the amount they're consuming, but I can guarantee that they've chosen that way to make them feel better for a short period of time, while then going back to their old habits, because for them, it's me, 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 me. I want to eat this. I want to eat meat. It's my choice. And it is their choice, actually, but it's not their personal choice, because there is a victim involved. A personal choice is me brushing my teeth, me dressing myself. That is a personal choice. That affects me. A choice is when it affects other people as well. It can affect other people as well. And I think we should challenge people's choices. And the way I can justify that is that's how we've approached other injustices like slavery. Slavery does not exist anymore because we've fought back on people's choices. Any argument you hear towards killing animals now, or enslaving animals, or exploiting animals now, I can guarantee has been used in one way, shape, or form towards slavery. in one way, shape, or
Oh
form.
yeah, and that's for sure. But the problem is the problem is, and why I was talking about history. It's because nowadays we have given to absolutely anyone the ability to be doing what he believes or feels or think is right. Everyone has those rights. No one feels how can I say?
Do you feel
Uh,
people have the right to eat animals?
no, I don't think people have the right to eat animals, but I think unfortunately, go explain that. I think nobody. If it's me personally, no one should have, and that's just to generalize the idea. No one should have a dog if the dog didn't say, "Hey, I want to stay in your house."
Mhm.
How about that? So for me, how can the person will have the right to kill an animal? I don't have the right. I don't have, and to generalize this whole idea, I don't think anyone should. This clothes is mine. I bought it, but the day I die, it's not going to be mine. So I'm not having an attachment to it.
Mm.
What I mean by that is, for me, animals shouldn't be eaten. But unfortunately, when you let people eat animals for so long, how do you say, consciously thinking that it's okay, how do you actually turn
Yeah.
up the thing the other way? So
But
same as it was slavery. Slavery was never good. For some people, they needed to understand. It needed all of that. But at the end of the
but
day,
for some people, slavery was just as good as eating meat as nowadays. It served a purpose. It's been around for a long time. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong. They thought that they were actually
exactly,
providing a home, providing sanctuary.
exactly.
They loved and cared about their slaves. All these sorts of things was exactly the same as what we use towards animals now.
I
Um,
agreed.
yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get at as well is like first of all, you mentioned the point of being plant-based. Do you consume you don't consume any milk from a different species, I'm guessing?
No.
Do you consume egg?
When sometimes my wife ended up doing eggs, I happen to have some. I
Yeah.
did have some, but it's
Yeah, so
not like, yeah.
yeah, this is probably like the approach with plant-based, and this is like a term I know in the scientific community it's caused a bit of a problem because plant-based obviously means from plants, and in some scientific studies they've referred to plant-based as sort of like anything above 80 to 90% of plants, which can be a little bit misleading, can cause a little bit of problem. And this is another reason I am technically plant-based, but I'm vegan above that because it's tied into my morals and ethics. So, and again, it's kind of like that sort of aspect. You know, my partner, she's been vegan 3.5 years now or something like that, ever since we've
Hmm.
been together. And when we first started seeing each other, she was very much. She didn't even refer to herself as vegan, but she didn't eat any animal-based products. She didn't consume cow's milk. But whenever she would go home, her parents live on a like, you know, they live in a village in Poland. All their animal products come from like their backyard goat, their backyard cow, the chicken meat would come from their chicken farm. It's very kind of like, you know, farm to table sort of thing. Their dad
Yeah,
would like slaughter all the animals himself. And, you know, she didn't eat any meat, but she did consume dairy and eggs when she went back home. And
yeah,
it became a bit of a problem because when I would ask her questions about it, she would get very upset about it. She would become very defensive, even though all I was doing was asking her questions based off her morals and ethics. So for me, again, like saying something like, "Oh, you know, I don't like running in shoes," but then you go for a run in shoes every day. It's a very inconsistent concept, right? So
hmm,
when she's telling me I don't eat animals because the animals get exploited, would you like she's saying something like, "Oh, I only drink cow's milk because it comes from our backyard, it's in the farm or anything like that." And it's okay. So would you eat meat from an animal that comes from your backyard farm? No, 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 I wouldn't do that. I would, okay, but you've just told me that you consume dairy from an animal that's in the back that hasn't given you any consent. That dairy was originally designed for the baby of that animal. Where's the
yeah.
baby now? oh, someone probably ate the baby. Okay, so you're essentially funding that because you're essentially consuming something from an animal which has been exploited and taken away from its family, even though even though directly, whatever the health reasons, whatever the sort of things besides that, you've caused the problem somewhere else, correct? And that's what kind of sparked that sort of memory. And she went from, I want to please my family, I want to make my family happy by consuming these sorts of products, which are go against my morals and ethics because I don't want any confrontation, I don't want any problems with them, to, you know what, I'm not consuming animal products anymore. And guess what happened? For the first few months, mum didn't talk to her, wasn't happy, really upset, all these sorts of terrible things. Guess what happens now, 2-3 years down the line? Oh, guess what? I just bought this amazing thing called tofu. Have you heard of tofu before? You know, it's like this funny story.
Right.
You know, I've just started eating this soy-based milk. It's really great. Her mum is eating more and more vegan products. And guess what happened? There's not the reducetarian effect. It's not the way of saying like, oh, it's okay to have a little bit of this and it's okay to have a little bit of that, because that creates this ability of, now I can just have this huge range of when and wish I please, right? So
I see
that's kind of
what you
that's
mean. I see what you mean. That really was a good example, and potentially the reason why for me as well, when my wife have cooked and have prepared this, and I'm just like, come on, man. Okay, she prepared it, so I'm gonna eat a bit of it, not because to avoid all of the fights that could come from it, but I think, and as I start to understand the way you, but the main problem, I mean, or it's not even the main problem, but eventually the direction where that could help you to be a little bit more understood into your quest, probably will be on to understand that everyone, I mean, even though you right, there's still, how can I say, there's still different ways to approach it. There's still like different ways to approach it, and I don't necessarily feel, because everything nowadays is a little bit like that. Things that let's say are pushed in your throat. Yeah, everything nowadays are pushing your throat. Will it be in terms of training, in terms of food, in terms of this, in terms of belief? Everything is pushed to people's throat. And I always believe that even though you can be 100% right on the point, the way you approach it always have to make people think. Like you said with your girl, it has to make them think. And with your partner, you could do that because she's close to you, so you could go and do that, and she would understand your motives and all of these things. And although it was your partner, she was very defensive at the beginning, because somehow it's, when you say that to someone, people could be taking that very personal.
Yep.
So the hardest part is how to make the thing clear, not sugar-coated, but also being sure that people are not having the space to take it personal. Once you succeed to solve this puzzle, I'm 100% sure it will be a lot more easier to make the point across. But I understand your point, and I just want to how can I say? Yeah, thank you for this let's say connection, because it's true, we don't separate injustice, and for me there's no injustice that is valid. No injustice is valid. So even what I'm doing, it makes me rethink of some of the aspects of seeing it. And
One of the things you mentioned, like having my partner close to me, having that conversation. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. The people that are close to me and I see every single day, I feel like I can make the biggest influence, but it doesn't mean that I'm limited to a small amount of people. By creating
No,
content
no, no.
like this for YouTube,
No, no.
people can watch
Yeah, of
these
course.
videos and they can relate to you, they can relate to me. But again, what people need to realize is that it has to do with the victim. And we've just got a few minutes left, but I want to say, there's a metaphor within planting the seed that if you want to plant a seed takes a very long time. It's a very delicate process. But the first step to planting a seed is to actually break down the dirt, is to actually build and barge through. And I think that metaphor sticks really well when it comes to veganism. We need to make a big impact at the beginning to plant the seed, because to give you the example of reducetarianism or any form of reducetarianism, meatless Mondays, vegetarianism, it's creating this aspect of like, I think I'm planting a seed, when reality is, oh, you know what? You should try Veganuary. You should try it like vegan for a month. And then what happens is that you do that month and that person's like, oh, I feel great after the month. And then after a while, they're just like, hey, do you want to go to our that favorite steakhouse that we really like? Oh yeah, you know what? My vegan month is over. Let's just go, right? And then they go back to their old ways. In many cases, they overcompensate and then they go back to eating the same, if not more, animal-based products. And that would be like a timeline scale. Let's say first month they're vegan. Second month they're kind of like eating a little bit less vegan, and the third month, they're starting to move towards vegetarianism, and then all of a sudden they're going back to eating meat, back to their old ways by month 4. The approach of, like, let's say my approach, the approach of like being unapologetic, being very straightforward, being very like, this is what, like activism form. Month number 1, I hate vegans. I never want to talk to a vegan again. This guy has questioned my morals and ethics. How dare you? That's month number 1. Month number 2, oh man, you know what? Like I've seen some more stuff about dairy and what happens in the dairy industry, but I've also seen some oat milk on the shelf. So I've gotten different alternatives. So month 2, they've stopped drinking dairy and they've actually have oat milk. If I don't like what's happening in the dairy industry, it's probably because they're going to the meat industry. So by month 3, they've reduced the amount of meat that they're consuming already. So by month 4, they've already kind of removed most animal-based products. They still enjoy eggs, so they're having eggs. So my point of this story is that my approach or their approach, both ways will get them to reduce their animal-based suffering. However, there is only one of those ways which actually allows them to properly think about the victim and actually create a long-term solution. So again, yes, you can say month 1, doing Veganuary, try Veganuary is going to be work long-term. But the way I became a vegan and the way many people have become vegan, we've been against veganism. We've been fighting against it so long, so hard. For 2 years, I went from I'm never going vegan to I'm now going to make sure I do everything in my power to reduce as much animal suffering as much as practicable as possible. So in those 2 years, I actually created a long-term difference, sustainable difference. Whereas in people like vegetarians and reducetarians, all those sort of things, I can tell you right now, at the very best, they are still reducetarians. 5 years down the line, they are still vegetarians. 10 years down the line, and they haven't made a difference, because when you are reducing meat, for example, you are replacing it with dairy and eggs. So you're creating the same problem, if not worse. You're not reaching the logical conclusion. And that's what we're trying to get people to accomplish, is stick to the morals, stick to their ethics, and actually reduce the amount of suffering as much as practicable as possible. So I hope that kind of explains my point with the reducetarian aspect. Both will create a reducetarian approach. One will be based off the victim and as opposed to ourselves.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking, but again, that's where I think we're not really getting. I'm not thinking of reducing or reduce. The way you said it, forgot that term. I'm not thinking of reducing or anything. I'm just saying that if you want to get a point across, it generally takes a little bit of a longer time, that's for sure. And the only thing that I'm saying is when you do get into that position, but you still have attention from people, it depends on you, on of, let's say, making yourself hurt. So I'm not saying that, people should be, but it's like good salesman. When a person comes to your door and knows how to sell, no matter what, he's gonna be coming to your house. You're gonna offer him tea and all this and all that. You might not buy anything, but that person have opened the door. Now, how you gonna leave and what you're gonna leave at the last point would make you potentially come, and maybe that person is not gonna be your client, but maybe that person is gonna turn your friend because of some of the things that you have said. What I mean is, once you have someone at your door, once you have a person looking, listening, or any of those things at you, you have already a base, and now it depends on you to see it as, like we said, to see it as something that's gonna be okay. Or it's just gonna be, listening to what I'm saying, or for one week, and he's not gonna change or anything, and all that depends on it. It will depend on how you present it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the salesperson approach, I understand what you're saying. The salesperson, the point of the sale is for both parties to benefit. By me making someone vegan, I don't benefit. I don't gain anything by someone going vegan, right? So for me, it's about understanding that the victim. We've only got a few minutes left. Is there anything else that you want to say? I just want to make sure anyone who is interested in knowing more about you, where can they find you? What's your Instagram? Do you have a website? Those sorts of things?
But Instagram, Chris_Moninga.
Yep.
It's still the same. I'm still not questing. Yeah, I'm still looking. I'm still there researching and all of this. Yep. So there's plenty of things that I haven't got yet myself holding to. And again, from the generation that I am, nobody was questioning. In the 70s, 90s, 70s to 90s, people don't question. You tell them that, okay, so that's the doctor hold my health. This guy hold this, that guy hold that. It's a recent thing where people actually start questioning onto those things. So there's plenty of things that I'm starting to discover. But the only thing that I say is, whatever problem we want to change, it's always coming from the past, because it's the source of the issue.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. We've got a couple minutes left, but I just want to say thanks for anyone watching. I'm going to make sure to put all Chris's information in the description below, so you can go follow his stuff. That's it from me today, Chris. Thanks again.
Adam, thanks for whoever listens to this young man might sound a little bit crazy. I had an approach that looks a little bit reckless, but he has a good heart and big brain. So many of the things that he says, don't take it personal. Exactly. But take the time to actually think of it. But it's true. It's true.
I'm very glad to hear that. I'm going to make sure I turn this short bit into a reel or a Instagram short or YouTube short.
Well, anything. I'm just trusting you to do anything with it. It's all good. And
thanks so much, Chris.
Pleasure.
I'm going to leave you to it, but I'll message you after this anyway. Take care, Chris.
Cool. Take care. You too.
See you, man. Bye.
Bye.